Mrs. Wickham's £2 bottle of vintage. And Mrs. Wickham was a wonderful lady. She was a local magistrate. In fact, I first knew her, she was my play school teacher. Bustling little lady, like a Thelwell character, or should have been in a James Herriot story. Lovely lady, made her own wine. It was notoriously crap and it could have run my lawnmower. I can still feel it whirring now, thinking about what I wanted to do. What I did do. I promise you, if I close my eyes and take a sip of any wine, I cannot tell whether it's white wine or red wine. I've got absolutely no taste for it at all, and I really can't stand it. I mean, I like Marmite on toast, and I eat pickled onion flavoured Monster Munch, so I'm not really a connoisseur of fine taste, but I know what I like. With wine, it reached a culmination when I was at Nursling in the fishing hut, where I had 7 rods down. I won't mention their names, but they were all lovely people, and they were unbelievable wine snobs. If you got invited as a guest down to Nursling, it was a big deal. It was your dream ticket, and you'd best turn up and you'd best shake hands with the right people and have a good joke to tell. Not too good though. Don't steal thunder from the head man's funny jokes. But the most important thing, and where you'd be judged and decided whether or not you'd come back again, was which bottle of wine you'd bring. And my God, it had better be a good one. And when the guest's bottle of wine was revealed, silence fell upon the room, seriousness returned, and the experts would sit round and judge what the offering was. But it was a nervous time for the guest, and it was a time of interest for me, and I felt sympathy for the guest. One day, one of the guests that turned up was a younger guy, and he turned up about an hour before he was due to be there. He was very nervous. He was he was delighted to be fishing the test, and made him a cup of tea, and he made some comment about the bottle of wine that he was supposed to bring, or that he had brought. Anyway, come dinner time, everybody had drunk a bit too much. Came to the time where the guest was due to unveil his offering. Anyway, he'd left it over my house across the road, and as the experts were talking about the virtues of some northern facing Italian vineyard and the advantages of Portuguese cork, I don't know, I was just about had enough of them, and you could see the guests' toes were curling a little bit. Anyway, I walked across the road into the fishing cottage. I got his bottle of wine, which he'd left on the table. Next to it was another bottle of wine, Mrs. Wickham's £2 bottle of vintage. She made all this wine out of nettles, anything, you name it, she made it into wine, or supposed wine. So then my mind clicked over into stupid mode. I'd also had a bit too much to drink, and I can still feel it whirring now, thinking about what I wanted to do. What I did do. So I opened both bottles. The guest's nice bottle of wine, which he hoped was going to secure his future fishing the test, and Mrs. Wickham's bottle of £2. I don't even know what it was, probably oak leaf or something, wine. I poured the posh bottle into a saucepan and then poured Mrs. Wickham's wine into the posh bottle, and then the saucepan into Mrs. Wickham's lot. So in other words, I just swapped them around. I thought I was being very clever. Anyway, I walked across to the fishing hut. There they were, still spouting on. I put the 2 bottles down. The lead expert, who was he was not such a likeable chap. Ha! What's this then? Mrs. Wickham's what? Ha ha! Let's have a look. I told him the story about Mrs. Wickham and said that she makes wine out of anything. Have a go, see what you think. £2. Anyway, of course you can imagine. Poured themselves a little sip. The expert pretty much spat it straight back up, saying, "Ha! Disgusting! Blah blah. Tell Mrs. Wickham to change her job. Blah 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 blah." Anyway, of course it was the really nice wine. A couple of them said, "Actually, that's not too bad. £2. Tell her to charge more." Worryingly, the guest, whose wine it actually was, he tasted it, didn't actually say anything. He just kept a bit quiet. Anyway, with that, we went on to the lovely bottle of wine that the expert had bought, the guest had bought, but of course this was Mrs. Wickham's wine. Oh, the expert picked the bottle up. I say, this should be this should be that, and poured it into his wine, into his glass, and when he took a sip, of course it was Mrs. Wickham, you could see his eyes started to glaze over. He did have a little bit of a cough. His voice changed octave, and he kind of, I can't remember what he said. I just thought it was the funniest thing. Everybody went through the same thing, and everybody was quite sympathetic to the guest and saying, "Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I don't mind it. It's not." Again, the guest took a slug of what was supposedly his wine, but it wasn't, and kept quiet again. So then I began to feel very, very awkward, because all I'd done is made everybody look a bit stupid, especially the guest, which wasn't the point of the exercise. But it did make my mind up about my opinion on these wine experts. Now the guest, who unfortunately was the loser on all of this, he did get invited again, and he came 2 or 3 times with those people, and I invited him again a couple of times. So he didn't lose out on all he wanted, which was his fishing. But yeah, wine. I don't know what never ever trust me with a bottle of wine. And always, if you're with me, tell your honest opinion about it. Otherwise, you never quite know.